This video is a demonstration of how to create a 5 squares with different values, lights and darks, shading. First off, in your sketchbook, what I want you to do is draw 5 squares. Let's see here. And each one is going to be, let's see here. Each one is going to be 1.5 inches. So I'm going to take my ruler and measure 1.5 inches. Okay, so I divide it into 1.5 inch markings. And it's going to be 1.5 inches tall. Inch and a half. There we go. Each of these boxes, box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right next to each other. Each one is 1 inch and 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches. Yeah, you don't want an inch box, or you don't want like 2 inches, just 1.5 inches is fine. And in box 1, we're going to draw a light gray. And as we move to the right, it's going to get darker and darker to number 5. And I'm going to show you how to do that with a pencil. Basic shading. We want to make each box distinct from each other, so they look different. They get darker and darker and darker as we move to box number 5. Okay, I'm going to start off with the pencil. Just a light shading, very light. Just sweep the surface. If you go beyond the box, it's okay, we can clean that up later. But what I want you to do is take this one gray and put it in all 5 boxes. And take your time. You don't have to apply a lot of pressure. And what's the purpose of doing this exercise? It's the purpose is for you to be able to control the level of light and dark within your drawings. Basic shading. I want to get each square even to that first one. Keep it the same. I would suggest a HB pencil or a 2B pencil. A little bit softer, goes on a little bit easier. You know, there's little areas here that are a little bit lighter. I want to go back in and try to even those areas out. Okay, so they're all pretty much the same value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're gonna add a little bit darker shade, another pass on 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you can keep the same direction if you want. And I'm using pretty much the same pressure. I'm just adding more another layer to each of these boxes. And I'm trying to keep it as even as possible. You want to continue over to box 3. You want to match number 2. Sharpen your pencil every once in a while, but control your pressure of your pencil. Don't push down too hard. Just keep it consistent pressure. And notice how I'm holding the pencil at the end. It just allows more control and subtlety. If I hold it like this, sometimes it's too dark. So I want to keep it nice and even for each of these boxes. And I'm trying to create the same level of gray, darkness within 2, 3, 4, and 5. And take your time. And I'm just trying to look for areas that are a little bit different. I'm trying to flatten it out to be one specific gray. So we're just adding more and more graphite to the paper and making it darker. We're preventing the surface of the paper from reflecting light back into the eye, the viewer. I'm using like a 45-degree angle motion with the pencil. But again, notice it's very similar, the values that I create, the light and dark of each one. And I don't want a whole lot of texture. I want to try to be as smooth as possible. Go back and find those little light areas. So let's take a little break here. Notice how number 1 is lighter, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're darker, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, next step, start off with number 3, 4, and 5. We're going to add another layer of dark. Maybe just add a little bit more pressure. And I want to stay within the lines. I don't want to go into number 2. I want to leave number 2 alone. Later on, when you draw different things, it's not going to be just squares and rectangles. It can be like curved shapes. But this is just an exercise for you to control your lights and darks. Yeah, I'm not like pushing into the paper. I'm just trying to get a nice even surface. And take your time. Go back in, and there's a light area there. I'm just going to flatten that out. Notice how 3 is darker than number 2. Okay, so we will continue this 3 level of darkness to number 4 and number 5. This is just a very controlled, logical, step-by-step progression of making things darker. By practicing this, it really creates understanding, and it really improves your basic fundamentals of drawing, of light and dark. And this it really helps later on when you're trying to draw more complex shapes and forms. These basic exercises are very important. So by not skipping these exercises, it can really refine your skills as an artist, as a drawer, and it gives you more options later on, more possibilities with your drawings. So I want 3, 4, and 5 to be the same value. I want them to be the same level of dark. So the goal here is to have 5 distinct lights and darks, progressively going from light, darker, 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 darkest. Okay, we're pretty much done with 3, 4, and 5 layered. Now we're going to go into 4 and 5, which will make them darker. I'm going to go into this one. I'm going to add another layer. And you might have to practice this several times, and that's okay. You can experiment with your different pencils, but I suggest an HB pencil, number 2, 2B pencil, a little bit softer, a little bit easier to shade. Okay, notice how 4 is darker than 3, so I want to make 4 and 5 the same level of darkness at this stage. If your pencil gets dull, make sure you sharpen it. That'll give you more control over your surface. My goal right now is not to make 5 darker than 4. I want to make it the same as 4. And you don't want a whole lot of texture within these. You want to make them as flat as possible. The same light and dark throughout the whole square. So 4 and 5 are pretty similar. Now we're going to finish off. We did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go with our last square. We're going to put in 1 level of darkness, and it's going to be your darkest value here. It's really strong, powerful, heavy. A little bit has a heavy surface to this 5. So my goal is to make number 5 distinct from number 4. Okay, I'm gonna use my ruler right here, put it on the edge, use my eraser. I can clean up the edge a little bit. Take a bit of cloth. Okay, so do you see the difference? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Each one 1.5 inches square. All 4 sides are 1.5 inches. 5 separate squares. It gets progressively darker. And your goal is to make it as smooth as possible. Each one distinct, a different value. And it gets progressively darker and darker and darker. And you're going to use this chart that you make, this scale of light and dark, and you're going to use this for your other drawing projects. It's going to be your guide. There we go. So there's my reference guide for value scale.